Hey there, and welcome to another one of my cheesy YouTube videos. This is probably going to be a series of videos on trying to get my 2007 Dodge, Ram 2500 with the 6.7 Cummins diesel working properly. The story actually goes back quite a ways. Several years ago, I took the passenger side battery out in order to replace an air conditioning line. And when I put the battery in, I got this crazy looking lightning bolt light on my dash. And jacking with the wires at the battery seemed to always make it disappear. And I actually drove the truck many miles and several years. Every time I had a problem, I played with my battery and got it working okay. Then it got to a point where it just did not act right and the throttle didn't feel right. And I wound up replacing the throttle pedal, and the truck actually ran the best it's ever ran since I owned it. It even got really good miles for one fill up. But lightning bolt light came back on, and now my big problem is it doesn't shift right. I got a slew of codes, and they refer to the transmission, they refer to the alternator and to the battery, and they all kind of point towards electric. The transmission code is low line pressure. We hooked up the Alltel diagnostic tool, and me and my son took it for a ride, and it said it had like 97 pounds of line pressure. No matter what I did and no matter how far I drove, that number stayed the same, which kind of makes me question whether it's correct or not as far as the electrical system. It's got a very small voltage range between pressure, proper line pressure, and low. So any kind of voltage problem could give a false reading. What it was doing on my test drive is it just got to where it stopped wanting to shift gears, and it would wind out. And for a while there, it would only do it for a little while. Then once the engine warmed up, it ran fine. It would shift all day long. And then it got to be where it would shift. It got worse and worse, let's put it that way. But I can get this truck to shift. All I got to do is rev it real hard as I'm driving, run the RPMs up, and then let off the throttle real quick, and she'll shift gears. Which tells me what I'm doing is I'm fooling the computer to think that the line pressure is good. Don't drive this truck much, and the last time I drove it, it had sat for probably a month or so, and it started real slow, and this truck acted all kinds of crazy once I got it running. And electrically, this was acting totally freaked out. So now the battery's dead again. It's been sitting for maybe 6 weeks. It really should last longer than that, considering it's got dual batteries. So the very first step of my troubleshooting my transmission problem is to make damn certain that my electrical problem is correct. And the very first step of that is to take these batteries out, put them on charge, get them fully charged, isolate them from each other, and then check the voltage on them and see if they drain themselves while they're sitting, which means they're internally shorted out, or one of them is, or something. Another check will be, once they're fully charged, is to load test them. And what a load test does is you apply a load to the battery through a load tester, and your voltage should stay high for a considerable amount of time while you got the load on the battery. If I remember right, it's like 10 seconds. So let's say you got 13.6 volts in your battery. Hook up your load tester, and then you flip the lever, and it puts 500 amp load or whatever load it's putting on the batteries. Your battery voltage should stay up. It should stay in the good range. If it drops rapidly, it means your battery's bad. And while I'm saying that, you cannot take your battery to an auto parts store, plunk it on the counter, and tell them to test it and get an accurate test if that battery's not fully charged. The battery's got to be fully charged in order to test it properly. Another great test is a specific gravity test, but not all batteries have access to the individual cells, and not all batteries are flooded batteries these days. So my first step now is I'm going to pull these batteries out. I'm going to take them over to my shop, and I am going to put them on charge, and we'll see what we got. My batteries do have removable caps. And on this battery over here, I don't know if you can see it, but both outward cells, I can see the tops of the plates. When you're checking the water level or the electrolyte level on the battery, you want it covering the plates, but you don't want it so full that there's no room for expansion. A battery that's overfilled can be just as much of a problem as a battery that's underfilled, because the battery acid will get on top of the battery and it could possibly form a path between the two posts and allow for discharge. So make sure your fluid level is covering the plates, and maybe a tad bit more, but not overfilled. And use distilled water. So I'm going to top off that battery before I put it on charge. I'll put both batteries on charge. I'm going to hook them up in parallel with a set of jumper cables while I'm charging, so both batteries will charge at the same time. Okay, I've got the batteries hooked up. If you got the kind of battery where you can remove the caps, it's good to leave the caps off because the caps are vented. And if the vents are stopped up, as the battery's charging, it's creating heat in there, which creates pressure. If it can't vent, it will blow the caps off. If you don't have a load tester, you can do a half-ass load test on the vehicle. Well, let's say it's a diesel with a manual kill, or a diesel with electric kill, where you can pull the wire off the kill solenoid and you can crank the engine without it starting. Or if it's a gas engine, where you can take the coil wire off to keep it from starting while you crank it. Then what you can do there is you can put a voltage gauge on the battery and have someone crank it for 10 seconds, whatever, and monitor the voltage. If it drops drastically, then you've got a problem in your battery. But if it stays up pretty decently, and I'll have to find some numbers for you, it'll give you an idea your batteries are strong. So the load test is a good test, so is specific gravity. Okay, I went out and bought this El Cheapo load tester from the Dockside Freight Store. It's a 135 amp load tester, and these are 850 cold cranking amp batteries, or somewhere along them lines. So I was hoping to find a 500 amp load tester, but it was able to tell me something. All right, it shows right around 13 volts. I'm going to push this lever here, and it's going to put a load on the tester. It's going to put a load on the battery. And what the load is, in the back of the tester, there's a coil that gets red hot when you put the load on. It's sitting right at 13 volts. I'm going to put the load on it. It's dropped below 12, but this is the second time I put a load on this battery. But it's only 135 amp. 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's just say that's 10 seconds. See what it does to the back of the load tester? So it took the load, so. So I'm going to transfer the load tester to the other battery. It's showing right about 13 volts. Are we ready? I'm going to pull the trigger. That needle says, hey, this battery ain't worth a shit. Okay, let's talk a little bit about batteries. Eye protection while working on batteries is a very smart idea. A face shield is even smarter. It's actually more recommended. If a battery were to blow up and you just got eye protection on, there's a chance it could still get around there, because it's coming up with, the acid is coming at you with the force. It could work past your glasses and get in your eyes. So a face shield's a really good idea. Rubber gloves and a rubber apron are also recommended for working around battery acid. A battery is fully charged at 12.6 volts or higher. The thing to get out of this is a 12-volt battery is not fully charged at 12 volts. Like I mentioned, that when the battery's charging, it's gassing. A lead acid battery, it's gassing when it's charging. As far as specific gravity is concerned, it's the weight, the density of the electrolyte compared to the density of water. Charged battery is the density of the water is more dense, it's heavier per given volume of the electrolyte compared to the same volume of water. Just the point is, you can check the specific gravity of the electrolyte to get an idea of the charge of the battery. But you don't want to do it right after you charge, because you got something called a surface charge. It's higher than normal content of sulfuric acid in the electrolyte. So you want to sit for a while, maybe 15, 20 minutes, or crank the engine for a few seconds to get rid of the surface charge. Well, I'm going to throw a curveball. I went ahead and I hooked the battery charger directly to that bad battery and let it charge, and it tested good when I was done. So what was going on there is obviously I had a bad connection at that particular battery when I had them hooked up in parallel. Kind of a bummer. I thought I had figured out what was wrong with my truck. But both batteries were testing good, and I let them sit overnight and rechecked them, load tested them, just tried to find them to be draining on their own. I'm looking for a problem, and I'm not finding it. But anyways, both batteries tested good, and I let them sit in the truck for a while, week or so. I'm not in a hurry to nail this problem down. I put the batteries in the truck, but I left them disconnected because I did a parasite draw test on the wiring system in the truck. Check out my video on that. Being that I'm lazy and not in a hurry, I left the batteries unhooked for well over a week. And I came out, stuck the voltmeter on the passenger side battery, showed just a hair above 12 volts. Well, that's okay. Not what I wanted, but it's okay. I stuck my voltage meter on the driver's side battery. It showed 10 volts. Now that is a problem. And that prompted me to go ahead and get a hydrometer, which is what you use to test specific gravity. So let's check the specific gravity in this battery, the one that showed 10 volts, and I'll show you how we know that it's a bad battery. I got the caps off the batteries, and we're going to stick the hydrometer in. You stick it into the fluid, and what you want to do, is you want to suck enough acid into the tube to where this inside piece floats. But you don't want to put so much in that the inside piece floats up and bottoms out at the top. So you just want to get the float, and then you want to read where the water is sitting on this red, white, and green gauge. So here goes the first cell. See it pop up? It's floating, and it's in the green. The green should be 1.23 to 1.280. So we push acid out of there and we move to the next one. Same thing, we get it to float, and it floats. And it shows good. Let's fast forward to the second to the last. Look at that. It's terrible. It's well above the red. I did put a fresh charge on this battery yesterday. So what's happening is we got a dead cell in the driver's side battery, and there ain't no fixing that. And the battery can show 12 point whatever volts, it can load test with that load tester that I got. I don't know that it would load test with one that would pull 500 amps or something, but it definitely passed all the criteria without using the hydrometer. So the hydrometers told us we got a bad cell. So what is a bad cell? Well, a battery cell is made of plates. You got positive plates and negative plates that are made out of two different types of lead, sponge lead and lead peroxide. And these plates are really close to each other. And the electrons on the negative plate want to flow to the positive plate on a charged battery. Now, the negative to positive, yeah, the electron flows from negative to positive, but in all practical purposes and using meters and how we ground things around here, it is just read it as positive and negative. But these electrons on a charged battery, they say, I want to get on over to that other plate. That's all they want to do. They don't want to go through a concrete slab, so putting a battery on a concrete slab when you charge it is not going to make it go dead. They want to go from the negative plate to the positive plate. They want to go back to where they came from. And in the course of doing that, you hook your terminals up to the battery, you turn a light on. They're like, hell yeah, let's go. And they go and they flow through the filament for the light bulb, make the light glow, and on their way to the positive plate. That's all your electrons in your car battery want to do. It has nothing to do with earth, ground, or anything like that. So we have come to the conclusion after weeks, I probably have had haircuts and everything else since then, I got a bad battery. So what's happening in that cell, you got them plates that are really close to each other, positive and negative plates. The positive plates are hooked to the positive post, the negative plates are hooked to the negative post. Well, these plates are really close to each other. And after some time, they'll start flaking. Little pieces of lead will flake off and drop to the bottom of the cell. Well, that lead gets caught up between positive and negative, and guess what that does? That shorts out the plates. And that's one way to get a bad cell. And just for an example, forklifts don't have any springs, and your warehouse forklifts with them hard rubber tires, they have no cushion to them. And the banging and jarring of that forklift, they go through batteries like crazy. And a smart battery vendor won't warranty a battery for a forklift because it's just going to come back. Because them plates will start shaking off that, the flaking will be accelerated, and the batteries will go bad pretty quick. So that's just a little story there. So anyways, I'm going to put 2 new batteries in this here old pickup truck, and hopefully my electrical problems will be taken care of. Then we can see if that had any effect on the transmission problems, because the transmission works off really low voltages. So stay tuned for video number 3. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you love life and learning new things, goaimless.com.